If you're reading this, you're a new entrepreneur. Welcome, Bosties, let's grow more and more.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here, Danny. So, hey, Bosties. My name is Ellie. Welcome to Entrepreneurship. And we are talking to Dr. Danny Brassell. Did I say it right? Brassell.
It's Brassell.
Brassell. See it?
Yeah.
That's my country accent coming in.
Atlanta country.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very nice to meet you. And we are talking to the Jim Carrey with the Ph.D. So I want to hear about how you even got this name. You are a speaker, you are an author, you have so many accolades. I can't even list them. So first, let's introduce you to the Bosties, and then let's get into how storytelling changed your life.
Well, first of all, Ellie, thank you so much for all that you do. We need a lot more of you. You're spreading some joy in the world. I love your smile. I love your energy. As far as the Jim Carrey, I have a philosophy in life. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself too seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for a week. Those little ones will set you straight. I had I spent a lot of my career teaching in South Central Los Angeles, and when I was teaching kindergarten, one of my little girls, LaShawn raises her hand. She's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks
Today, like now, actually.
I ain't all that.
I have a 2-year-old niece. She does that all the time. She'll be like, she's like, what's that? Or
Yeah.
you're getting a little bigger. And you're like, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for noticing. So, yes, I wanted to talk about how personal stories have transformed your life, because here at Entrepreneurs, we are a lot of new or aspiring entrepreneurs. And our goal is to make sure that no one quits. It is hard becoming an entrepreneur. It's hard deciding that you want to be one, and then it's even harder to actually get over that first hump, start making money, start making this consistently. And so I created this show so that they would have a place to go, hear some stories about how some successful people got started and how it's not always an easy road, but it is worth the journey. So tell me a little bit more about how you went from teaching to becoming a speaker and an author.
Well, first of all, entrepreneurship is great. You get to quit working 40 hours a week for somebody else so you can work 100 hours a week for yourself.
It's wonderful.
If I was going to write an autobiography, it would be called Pivots, because I went from teaching. In 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything, and I could focus on all the negatives. But among the positives was I started speaking on the side. And during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business. And then it attracted the attention of some of the top speaking training agencies. And several years ago, I met who would become my co-founder, Coach Jimmy Hayes Nelson. And I call this the professor and the performer because my background's academia. He comes from Broadway. And we loved coaching entrepreneurs, business owners, executives on how to create more powerful presentations. But the company that we were working for was one of the top companies in America. And basically, they offered 2-day seminars where people would put together a presentation. But that was it. They never really had any kind of follow-up. And fulfillment is all about watching my students succeed. It's kind of one of the reasons I had to leave teaching. I have a very high standard for my students. I will not let you fail. I hold you accountable. And working with the people I work with now, they're highly motivated. They want to grow their business. And I believe that speaking is the fastest way to grow your business. There's all kinds of different platforms. You have an excellent one right now, being on a podcast.
This is I started a podcast. I kind of did it backwards. I didn't have a business before I had a podcast. I just kind of had a podcast and then ended up having a business after. So I definitely want to talk to you about like which comes first. What should we start doing if we are thinking, I would like to be a speaker. This seems like something I would like to do. How do you get started?
Well, when I work with people, man, most of the people I work with, they either don't really want to speak or they're terrified of speaking. I mean, I have worked with some pretty major people. Jimmy's the one that likes to name drop. I like to give a little bit of confidentiality to my clients. But what we do is we take people through what we call our 5 C's process. That's just what we call it. There's all kinds of different names for these types of things. And so the 5C approach to storytelling is, first, you need clarity before you do anything for a presentation. And then your presentation, first you have to connect with your audience, you have to teach content, you have to have a clear call to action, and you have to have a compelling close. And really directly answering your question, there are 2 questions, clarity questions we call them, that if you can answer these, you're in pretty good shape. And if you cannot, at least succinctly, you're in trouble.
Okay.
You'd be amazed, Ellie. 95% of the people I work with, a lot of them are highly successful, and they can't succinctly answer these 2 questions.
I was about to say, Bosties, get ready. Answer these questions.
The first question is, who is your audience? And so you were very good when you booked me for the show. You said, well, my audience are aspiring and beginning entrepreneurs. I'm like, great. You know your audience. I mean, you can even niche it down even more. You could do women. You could do African-American women. You could do African-American women from Atlanta. And there's nothing wrong with that. The riches are in the niches. We were working with a woman, Kathy, a couple of months ago, and her niche is she makes saddles for professional polo players. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that niche. That's great. I said, well, do you make much money at that? She's like, oh, last year I made about $800,000. I'm like, well, I need to learn how to make saddles.
Yeah. What is in the saddle?
So the first question you have to answer is, who is your audience? And I always recommend, your easiest audience is usually the people you feel comfortable with. So when I first started speaking, I was a teacher, so I spoke to teachers, and then I expanded to working with parents, and then I started working with school administrators. And then a guy in my mastermind was a highly successful businessman, and he wanted me to train his sales force. I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified to do that. And he looked at me, he's like, Danny, if you can get teenage, middle school, inner city kids to read Shakespeare, you can totally motivate my sales force. So that was good. So I was able to expand my audience. The second question you have to answer yourself is, what is the problem that you solve? Now, the problem is, a lot of people, they don't mention problems, they mention solutions. And the reason that's a mistake is because you have to speak in the language of your audience. Your audience isn't interested in your solution. All they're interested in is their problem is solved. And so, for example, we were working with fitness instructors, and we asked, well, what's the problem that you solved? They said, healthy living. Like, well, healthy living is actually a good thing. Maybe obesity, maybe that's the problem that you're solving. When we work with financial planners, they'll say, well, having a good retirement savings. Well, that's a good thing. Maybe making sure that you have enough money until the day you die. Maybe that's the problem you're
solving. Have one at all. Have a savings account at all.
So if you can answer both of those questions, you're in pretty good shape. And really, here's a little strategy for everybody in the audience. Most people waste their time on their phones on social media. I think that this is an incredible tool when used properly. And so what I do is if I'm trying to learn something, I have all kinds of updates throughout the day to help me practice things. And so I'm a bad Christian. I've been trying to learn different scripture. And so every day at 4:29, I have an alert. I'm trying to learn Ephesians 4:29, which is, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful in building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Okay, I've been practicing.
Good.
I read the book Dune, and there's a thing in Dune called the Litany Against Fear, which I've been trying to memorize, which is, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is a little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over and through me. And when the fear has passed, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing, only I will remain. So I've been practicing these things. So if you're a business person trying to do a quick elevator pitch on what do you do, I practice that all the time. I'm like, well, I empower leaders to transform their personal experiences into powerful business stories that inspire action, drive growth, and create lasting impact. Well, I've practiced it 500 times. It should flow like the Pledge of Allegiance or the Lord's Prayer. And the more reps, I always tell people, it's all the reps. It's, speaking is just a skill set. It can be taught. And the way you get better, it's the same thing with your podcast, Ellie. I guarantee you the first time you did your podcast, it stunk. And the second time you did it, it stunk, but it didn't stink as bad as the first time. And now you got like this fine oiled machine. So it's no problem. I'm doing 7 a day. I just interviewed, the president of Mongolia. And now, I mean, you can do it.
When it gets to that level, we'll be real big.
I don't know if becoming the biggest speaker in Mongolia is your goal.
But I'm definitely into thought leaders. So if he is a thought leader, then he could be on the show.
I encourage you. So here, this is my pet peeve. I encourage you, instead of being a thought leader, become a results leader. That's what I always tell my people.
Okay.
I don't need another thought. I need another result.
I like that. That is so true.
There you go.
So I was just talking to somebody who was very much had this beautiful story, and it really got us really into his business very fast. And it seems like that's kind of like what you help people develop. When it comes to storytelling, tell us how important it is and how we could try to develop an engaging story around our business.
That's a great question, Elliot. Well, I'll give you and your audience an actual exercise I take my clients through. So later on, I want you to sit in a comfortable chair with a pen and paper, libation of choice. And for an hour, I want you to write down every story that's happened in your life. And I don't mean the entire story. I just mean triggers. Like
First
the time I locked myself out of the car in front of Costco.
Okay.
The time Dad spilt mustard on his tie at that fancy restaurant. You'll find in an hour you can come up with like 500 triggers like this. So that's the first part of the exercise. The second part of the exercise, I want you to think about, what's this story really about? Oh, this is a story about never giving up. Oh, this is a story about loyalty. Oh, this is a story about love. And if you go on my computer, I literally have hundreds of folders with tens of thousands of stories. So whenever I need a story based on, because a lot of people, they tell stories, but the story doesn't have anything to do with the point that they're trying to make. So I'll give you an example. Here's one. I like stories. I like a lot of kid stories. I used to be a teacher, but the reason I like kid stories, I'm working with a guy right now. He's climbed the highest peak on all 7 continents. He swam with sharks in Madagascar. He's done the Iditarod. I look at him like, dude, nobody can relate to you. Nobody's done that.
We don't even know what that is.
But everybody peed their pants in first grade. That's a good story, because what you're trying to do is to connect with your audience. And so here's an example. So I'm like, when I was an elementary school teacher, every other teacher at the school went through hundreds, if not thousands, of Band-Aids every single school year. I mean, kids love Band-Aids. They work better than smokes on the prison yard. Well, every single year I went through exactly one Band-Aid. And my colleagues always ask me, what's your secret? Well, on the first day of school, there's always some chubby little boy. We'll call him Paco. He's picking at a scab all morning, finally has success after lunch. And the annoying little girl next to him rubs her nose, raises her hand, and says, Mr. Brassell, Paco's bleeding. I'm like, oh my gosh, Paco, you know what you need? You need a Band-Aid. Now 33 little heads look at me. I'm like, I got a drawer full of Band-Aids in my desk, and I don't just have ordinary Band-Aids. I got Mighty Morphin Power Ranger Band-Aids. I'm going to give you the Green Ranger because he's the coolest. Now Paco's grinning from ear to ear. All the kids are smiling. I take Paco to my desk. Oh, before I put on the Band-Aid, we got to clean out the wound. Then I show the kids the bottle of rubbing alcohol. I'm like, hey, Paco, hold on to my fist. This might sting a little bit. I start pouring rubbing alcohol. Ah! There you go. Hey, anybody else need a Band-Aid? My students can have a skull fracture, and they will never ask for a Band-Aid. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to give you Band-Aids today. I'm going to give you practical strategies on how to create a well-crafted story that inspires action, drives growth, and creates a lasting impact with your audience. So you see how
I love, yes.
And I like to use humor. I mean, too many, life's too short, man. I can't stand the sad, it separates Jimmy and me from a lot of the people I see coaching out there. Most people say, oh, you should talk about your most traumatizing moment. I'm like, really? 3 reasons why I don't do that. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff.
We're all traumatized.
We don't hear another sad story. We need stories of hope. Second of all, what Jimmy and I are coaching you to do is to create a presentation, and this is how you're going to introduce yourself to new audiences. So you're going to give this same presentation again and again and again do you really want to talk about the worst day of your life again and again? I mean,
So true.
I got a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's told that story over 1,000 times. I mean, you got to be a lot stronger than me to talk about the worst day of your life. I have no idea how he does that. And third, I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I think there's something admirable about that as a goal. I believe the people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, now those are crocodile tears and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are more ethical ways to get people to want to do business with you. And so that's what drew me to you. Ellie, I mean, you got a great smile, you got great energy. And I don't have time for the worry warts and the Debbie Downers of the world. I want to be around people with energy that are part of the solution, not the problem. That's what I love about you.
I appreciate that. That is, I'm going to say it took me a while to cultivate my story because sometimes you're right. It is very effective to tell a bad story. People give you money very, very fast after that. But you are also right in the fact that by the 10th time I told my sad story, I felt like I was being defined by that one moment.
Right.
And that one moment didn't define me. It was all the moments after that. So then I started focusing on let's start on another moment. Let's start on your Peachtree Road races. Let's start on like some other things that are really fun. So I've done the Peachtree Road race. This will be my 26th time this year. Yeah. My mom started me at 8 years old. And when you're 8 years old, you're like, who wants to run 6.2 miles? Like, why is this something you want to do? And it's on 4th of July. Thanks, Mom. Like, this is a wonderful outing. I love you, right? But every year it was the challenge because I didn't do that. So I got to see how fast I was, how strong I was, how much I could push myself through all the leg pains or whatever it was. And then after a while I started preparing for it because it would be like, I don't want my legs to hurt for 6 miles. So let me get used to the 6 miles. And then it got to a point where I started timing myself. And then it got to a point where I wasn't timing myself. I was passing goals. I was, trying to figure out who else could come with me. It became this thing. So instead of going from just this girl who was complaining, I took this moment and I built upon it. It became something that became actually a very wonderful tradition that I look forward to every year. So for me, all of these little moments, I'd rather talk about that than the day that I was like in a domestic violence relationship. Like it was two different things. They both talk about tenacity, right? I could talk about how I went from that to a brand new life, or I could talk about how I went from being an 8-year-old complainer to somebody who is like 33 and very excited to run her next Peachtree Road race. So I think you're very right on stories can change the vibe of how people even view you because you end up defined or in a box depending on what story you tell. That's all they know about you is what you said on stage. So I want it to be a good story. When you help people come up with their signature story, what do you do? Because like you said, you did say write down all of these different stories, but how do you know which one to pick? How do you know that this one is going to be effective?
Well, I'm always your audience, Ellie. And so I want the story that moves me. And I know it almost immediately when I'm like, oh, you got to use that story. I like stories that are funny. Typically, we were working with a guy, Richard, a few months ago. He's a very successful financial planner. And he used to start off his presentation. He's like, I've been in the business for 30 years. I've made over $1 billion for my clients. I worked with this famous person and this famous person. I said, Richard, time out. What are the 3 most important elements of real estate? Location, location, location. It's all right to brag, but you're doing it in the wrong part of your presentation. And this is an important strategy for everybody listening. Stop talking about your successes. Start talking about your failures because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you talk about your own failures, the more they're going to see themselves in you and connect with you. And so now the story we changed Richard to is now he starts off his presentation. He talks about the very first customer he was able to sign up 30 years ago.
Wow.
It's basically a comedy of errors. He did everything wrong. There's no way. I have no idea why this person gave
him money.
Yeah, and he saw an immediate, because the way he gets customers is like twice a week, Ellie. He has these for like 50-year-old couples. He has them at a steak restaurant for a free steak dinner while he does his talk. And he said he used to notice that the husband's almost always got his arms crossed, like, what's he trying to sell me? How much is it going to cost? Well, now that he's changed his approach and he has this story, says the same guy is patting his knee. He's laughing so hard. And this is what's most important to me, because this is the only way I measure our effectiveness, is he went from an average of 6 of the 15 couples booking a free consulting call with him. Now he's averaging 12 out of 15. And that's how we measure effectiveness. I mean, it's great if people are giving you a lot of applause and telling you you're the greatest speaker, but the only way I evaluate the effectiveness of your presentation is how many people in your audience decide to take that next step with you. And it could be an unpaid next step. So like, subscribe to my podcast or book a free phone call. It can be a paid next step, like buy my product or invest in my coaching program. But we want to, we don't want to just move hearts. We want to move the needle. I'm working with people that are struggling in business, and I want to make sure that we're getting them more customers. And I actually love the way you said that earlier. I'm going to use that, Ellie, is that don't let this story define you, the sad story. I'm like, that's really well said. I love that. Gosh, I wish you'd been my teacher. I would have loved to have told that to me. I like to pride myself that I always encourage my students, but that would have been a nice story to encourage. I like that. That's really, you're saying that.
I learned that from somebody else, so I won't take all the credit. But she had also had a very hard life, and she said that was something that she didn't want those hard moments to define her. She wanted happy moments, good moments, things that were actually the results of that hard thing or tragic thing to be the definition of her. So last thing that I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned that reading and books are a big part of creating a story, learning about yourself, discovering a new part of you. Tell me about how reading has affected your storytelling, and if you have any recommendations for the Bosties.
Yeah, well, I absolutely hated reading growing up, and it wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city and I saw a lot of my kids didn't have the resources I had that I said, basically, shame on me. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. But when I was teaching middle school, I was the only teacher in the school that none of my students were ever late to class. And it's because I always started off class by reading aloud a Paul Harvey story. You're very young. When I was growing up, there was a guy on the radio called Paul Harvey. He'd come on every day at 12:15. He's like, I'm Paul Harvey, with the rest of the story. And for 5 minutes, he'd describe a person or a company. And the whole time you're trying to guess, who's he talking about? And my students absolutely loved it. But a lot of the people he talks about are like, Fred Astaire and Sears and Roebuck. And kids today didn't even know any of that. And so I wrote this book, Leadership Begins with Motivation, as an homage to Paul Harvey. And this book has stories like that, but it's updated with people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and people like that. Okay. Well, after I wrote the book, Allie, I read it, and I'm like, completely unintentionally, most of my examples were of white male Americans. And so the latest book I wrote is called Misfits and Crackpots. And this book is filled of stories primarily about women, minorities, and international people. And I just love, here, I'll give you a story to get you pumped up. This is actually the very first story I wrote, and it's chapter 19 in the book, but it was the very first story I wrote. So it's these two women. They're both choreographers in New York City. One's named Martha, one's named Agnes. And Agnes has just opened up her third Broadway show. And fans seem to like it, but the critics have panned it. And she looks at Martha, she's like, I give up. I think I'm just going to close down the show. And Martha looks at her, she's like, you can't do that. Who cares what others think? It doesn't even matter what you think. There's only one you. There's never been another you. There's never going to be another you. But if you close this show, you're denying the world your gift. Well, Martha was Martha Graham, who's considered the mother of modern dance. She won the Kennedy Center Honors and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And her friend Agnes was Agnes DeMille, who won the same awards. And she became the very first woman to have 3 concurrent hits on Broadway. And she decided to keep the play open, but she changed the name to Oklahoma.
Wow.
Yeah. This is how you, like, I like getting people pumped up. I just love stories.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know that unless you took a time to like really get to know who that person was. And I do, you know what I really love is your awareness of the audience. You said, "Look, I was only preaching to a certain group of people. Let me show you that there are other people who have success stories. Let me make a part 2." So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it was something I learned just teaching in the hood, because I thought I was going to be the teacher. They taught me a lot more than I taught.
Isn't that
There's
how
things,
that always goes?
when you're around people that are different than you start to look at the world a little bit differently. And I would always because my school always had really low test scores. And they're like, oh, it's culturally biased test. I'm like, you're saying that because you did so poorly on the test. But then I started looking at the test. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's 12 white guys in Princeton, New Jersey intentionally making the test culturally biased, but they are biased. There's
Yeah.
like biases.
It's just something that only 12 white guys would think of, you know?
Well, it's like just a basic thing I notice. Like if you're reading stories or even test questions, like the names of the characters are like John and Mary. And I'm like, well, most of my students are Jose and Shaniqua and Lee. And like, it doesn't have to be multicultural. It doesn't have to be about culture to be multicultural.
Yeah.
Like there was a test question once, and it was asking about it. It had nothing to do with the question, but the character was eating quiche, and the kids kept on asking me, "What's quiche?" And I'm like, "Ooh, that's interesting."
Some people know what that is, and some people don't. I gotcha.
Exactly. And like, based on your culture, if you're French, quiche is no big deal.
It's
or
regular.
Like living in upper class, no big deal. But so that was interesting to me, and I just think it's important, especially today. I was asked a question the other day. They're like, "How do you want to be remembered?" I'm like, "Kind." I'm so disgusted by how disrespectful people are. It's all right to disagree. We live in the greatest country in the world. It's great. Everybody thinks differently. That doesn't give you the right to be rude. It doesn't give you the right to call people names.
Yeah.
I mean,
think differently.
And really, if we listen a little bit more, I mean, sometimes I'm disagreeing with a person, but the more I listen, I have a Post-it on my desk that says, "What if I'm wrong?" I don't know. That's how I know I'm getting older. I realize how little I actually know. And I like listening to different points. And again, I don't necessarily have to agree with the point of view, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
And so that's what creating these stories. I want stories of hope. I love stories of people that everybody else said there's no chance. It goes basically to what you were saying is, I'm not going to let this define me. Don't let the bad thing define you. Let the success define you. That was so well put. I love that, Ellie. It's great.
Thank you. I'm glad I left an impression. Because sometimes you're talking and talking, you don't even know if anybody cares about what you said, heard about what you said. And then I start getting all this feedback, and then I start to realize I did have something good to say. It is important for me to speak every day. It is important for me to share my stories, share my opinions. And like you said, it's okay to have differing opinions. It's okay to be from different places, but we have to treat each other with a lot of respect. Yeah. So, Danny, if my bossies want to get to know you a little bit more, read some of your books, maybe even have you as a speaking coach, how can they find you?
Well, as a thank you to you and your tribe for listening and enduring me today, I wanted to give everybody their own free, well-crafted story blueprint. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, I'm going to give everybody their own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process we take our clients through in creating their well-crafted presentation. What this does is it takes the guesswork out of it for you and shows you exactly why you put this information in this part of your presentation. And what this means for you is the peace of mind that you're going to get more customers, and more importantly, you're going to have a greater impact. You can get that at And I just really, again, want to thank you, Ellie, for having me today. And, this is something you were kind of alluding to, but I want you to understand this, because I had a podcast host the other day, and she's like, well, we only have about 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
I'm like, remember this. It doesn't matter how many people are subscribing. All that matters is who is subscribing. You might be that shining light that keeps another person going. Or if you only have one subscriber and it's Oprah Winfrey or
right,
that ain't a bad audience. So, and it's I'm completely serious. Like, you never know. I
love that.
I'm an abundant thinker, and some of the people I've had the most success with, when I first met them, you would have no idea the network that they belong to.
Yes.
So thank you for having me, and thanks for all you do.
Danny. Thank you so much. And we are excited to get to know you a little bit more. I'm definitely going to try out the story guide. Cool. I'm a rambler, so I need a guide. So I will definitely be using that, and we will talk to you later. Thank you, Danny. Have a good day.
You too. God bless.
All right. Bye.
Come on, besties, let's take the lead. Turning our visions